Nothing is really all that different from the way the show always goes, but just a little more extreme. Beth Dutton hates Jamie Dutton. Jamie Dutton hates Beth Dutton. That's always been the case ever since childhood trauma, but now things are elevated. Currently, Beth is like a coiled snake waiting to spring on her duplicitous and cowardly brother Jamie, who Beth is now, correctly, convinced was involved in the staged suicide that took the life of her beloved daddy, John Dutton. Yellowstone has finally provided the complete background of John Dutton's enigmatic death in the most recent episode. 353, the third episode of Part 2 and the 11th episode of Season 5, advances the main plot and leaves us wondering what hope the Duttons have for maintaining their future, particularly their ranch. This week's episode is packed with content, so let's dive right in and continue to enjoy Taylor Sheridan's flagship Paramount drama. 353 follows up to its name and takes a considerably darker turn after first flashing back to the conclusion of Beth's time in Texas with Rip and then showcasing the house that Casey, Monica, and Tate had all created together. Here we learn that John Dutton was murdered the same evening that Casey and Monica completed their home renovations and Beth returned from Texas. We see three assassins enter the governor's mansion, sedate him using military-grade techniques and tools. They inject John between his toes to prevent him from resisting, and then carry him into the toilet and across the hall. There, they shoot him in the head with his personal service weapon. Although Kevin Costner is replaced by a body duplicate, Yellowstone gives us the impression that we are seeing the murder of John Dutton. While traveling, Beth has a pain in her chest the instant John is killed. She knows it's something else, but she phones Rip. Similarly, Casey is awakened from his slumber by a nightmare, and shortly after he receives a call from the Helena Police Department. Yellowstone then returns to the present as Jamie and Senator Linnell Perry still mourn John's death after catching us up on the history. In the hopes that he will withdraw the conservation trust that John had the Dutton land placed in, Jamie consents to meet with the incoming governor, Stephen Rawlings. In addition to agreeing, Rawlings wants to reinstate the lease that was initially granted to Market Equities. Perry disagrees with Jamie's desire for the state to use eminent domain to take the Dutton property by force. She has actually changed her mind. Perry cautions them against turning Montana's Paradise Valley become a tourist destination like Jackson, Wyoming, also known as Jackson Hole, which is no longer able to support itself independent of that industry, even though he was the one who initially struck the agreement with M.E. Clara Brewer, John's former assistant, follows Perry in abandoning Jamie and Rawlings' intentions. She asks the senator for a job since she can't work for a man who wants to ruin all the good her previous boss did. Perry concurs, but not before hinting that she should, free from confidentiality commitments, utilize her current job list to alert others, likely Casey and Beth, about Jamie and the incoming governor's plans for Montana. Then, at last, a can of worms is revealed. When Casey gets to the morgue, he demands to view the body and the report because he is eager to discover what truly happened to his father. After reading it, he asks Detective Dillard for a toxicological report. In front of him, Casey coerces medical examiner Janice Everly, played by Vanessa Shaw, into conducting a fresh autopsy. When she does, she notices that John has bruises on his calves, indentations on his back, and abrasions on his toes. She doesn't consider it as a homicide until Casey has used some of his military maneuvers to make a point. She acknowledges this does show signs that he was forcibly restrained and expresses regret for first missing it. Casey answers, "You're supposed to miss it." Casey then informs Beth that he must speak with Jamie. She begs, "You leave him to me," but her requests are ignored. Casey storms into his brother's office and hurls Jamie over his desk with explosives. Jamie attempts to persuade Casey that he had nothing to do with their father's death before he can launch another attack. He makes the straightforward case that killing their father would not benefit him because he is no longer in the will. "I do not benefit from F Airport," he says. "You benefit, which means the ranch benefits. Your son gains." Jamie goes on to say that he was equally as surprised to learn of what had occurred. "I don't have anyone to share my grief with. I don't have family anymore. I don't have anyone," he wails. He acknowledges that Beth has poisoned them against one another, but he ignores the repercussions of his own behavior. Unfortunately, he is correct. He makes one more attempt to persuade Casey that selling a portion of the land would be the best course of action, pointing out that doing otherwise would eliminate the Dutton legacy as a whole. Even though they didn't agree, Jamie assures Casey that he still loves him and that he also loved their father. "I could never harm you in that way." He ends, "I could never do that, period." "I hope not, Jamie," Casey finally responds after remaining mute for the entirety of Jamie's tirade. "I genuinely do. For both my benefit and yours." Following Casey's departure, the Helena Police Department releases a fresh press release declaring that John Dutton's cause of death has been formally changed from suicide to undetermined. A homicide investigation has been launched as a result. As her assassin Grant Horton is seen calling someone about the news somewhere, Sarah Atwood grows obviously frightened upon hearing it. It's not good either. The Yellowstone Dutton Ranch itself is being seriously attacked even as the murder investigation is starting to get better. Governor Rawlings invokes eminent domain on the Dutton property when he speaks before the Helena Senate Assembly and reinstates the lease with M.E. Even worse, because Jamie was so near to John's death, Rawlings orders him to step aside from the investigation. Even though Jamie subsequently tells Sarah that only he, as Attorney General, can recuse himself, a judge could also do so. The adoptive Dutton feels uncomfortable being publicly criticized in front of the whole Montana government. After witnessing the gathering firsthand, Beth informs KC that they have two options: sell the ranch or lose it. Their only choice is to decide which components they want to sell and for what price. If they don't, the entire thing will be taken away from them. The taxes alone will leave them deeply in debt. At that moment, Mo and Thomas Rainwater arrive and offer their deepest sympathies for John's death. Rainwater remains for a meeting with Beth while Mo departs with Casey. She describes how much her father respected the man, how she could always tell when he didn't respect someone. Despite their frequent animosity, Rainwater nevertheless held John in high regard. The topic of the ranch's future is only discussed after this. "I'm a realist, there's no way this place stays whole," admits Rainwater. However, how much of it can stay that way? Beautiful. The way my grandfather used to stroll it. He promises to assist however he can, but the tribal council, which supported Angela Blue Thunder in Season 5, Part 1, has now largely rendered him helpless. However, Beth thinks the ranch cannot be saved or even preserved. She believes that her father and her forefathers were naive idealists who put up such a valiant fight only to prolong its collapse. According to her, Bozeman has doubled in size since the 1990s, and Montana is probably going to increase much more by 2040. Now we got a front row seat to its destruction. And there's not a thing I can do about it, she says. Rainwater continues to provide whatever assistance he can. However, where did Mo and Casey flee to? During their stroll, they talked about Casey's vision from the Season 4 finale: grass on the streets and weeds on the rooftops. We now know more about what he meant when he informed Monica that the vision would be the end of us back then. Casey informs Mo that, although it isn't really a decision at all, he feels as though he will have to decide between his family and the ranch. He still finds it difficult to decide when and how to make such a choice. "You're not supposed to know yet," Mo whispers to him. "It won't feel like a choice at all, and you'll know when the moment arrives. It will feel like destiny." When the time comes, Mo assures KC he will be happy because the decision will be so obvious. Sarah goes back to Jamie's place after purchasing a prepaid burner phone somewhere. Despite her attempts to reach Grant, all of his previous phone numbers have been disconnected. She is terrified when Jamie, who is now enraged with her, shows up after she smashes her burner phone. He accuses her of placing the blame for John's passing and is current political shame on him, asking, "What the F have you done to me?" However, Sarah advises Jamie to mature and adopt an attorney's perspective, pointing out that there isn't any evidence linking him to John's murder in any way. She says, "I took all the risk and I took it for you," alluding to her encounter with Grant, and desire is all you need. Jamie claims that the millions she would earn from Me's airport agreement are the reason for this. Jamie slaps Sarah when she suggests that he didn't give a damn about his father's passing because he wanted the governorship so desperately. She slaps him back and walks away. Jamie apologizes over the phone to Sarah as he drives off. She continues, "Jamie, you have to start believing in yourself and trust me. You have nothing to be afraid about." However, Sarah is terribly wrong. A couple pulls up beside her and asks for directions as soon as she tells Jamie this. As it happens, they are assassins who are probably dispatched to tie off any loose ends on Grant's behalf. Jamie hears it all and sobs as Sarah is killed instantly while they are still on the phone. 353 started with John Dutton's execution and ended with his killer being executed by the same individuals she had recruited to carry out the murder.